In this video, we'll create a full-screen responsive landing page with HTML and CSS. Okay guys, so let's go ahead and get started by first checking out this full-screen responsive landing page that we're going to create using just HTML5 and CSS3. So as you can see there in the center of the page, we have a large heading or title and then the button underneath. And when we size the website down, you'll find that the text, the button, and the paragraph text underneath the full screen image there for the landing page is going to decrease in size. So later in the video, I'll show you how you can add your own text in there for the title and the button, as well as add your own image that's going to take up 100% of the screen here for the landing page. So I'm going to go ahead and just open up my text editor real quick. So all you'll need to do is create two quick files using your text editor. So I just have a blank index.html and style.css file. The program that I'm using is Sublime Text. Another great program you could use is Brackets. So once you have your index.html and style.css files open in your text editor, just open up index.html in your web browser. I'm using Google Chrome, so we can see the changes as we're making them here to the website inside of index.html and style.css. So let's get started with the doc type or the HTML tag itself. So just write doc type HTML and then close the HTML tag out. And then we'll do our head and body sections. So we're going to keep the head section pretty simple in this case. Let's go ahead and just add a title and just call it full screen landing page. And underneath the title in the head section, we'll link to the style sheet. And if we just type link, it should recognize that we're trying to link to the style sheet, and then just add style.css for the actual link where it says href. So once you've done that, drop down underneath the head section and we'll just add our body area of the document where all of the actual content for the website will be contained. So the first thing we'll do here inside of the body is we're going to create the section that contains the full screen image and the text and button that reside inside or on top of the image. So just write section, the HTML5 tag, and then write class intro. Okay, and then drop down and we'll add a div or divider. And we're going to call this div class inner. Okay, and then one more div class where the breathe easy and get started content will be displayed and centered on the page, and we'll call this div class content. Okay, and then drop down and you can create another line here, and we're going to add our heading. So just write H1, and this is where the breathe easy text is going to appear. So you can type that in there. I'll just paste it in because I have it in front of me already. And then drop down, and underneath that we're going to add the button. So just write A, and this is going to be a link, but we're not actually going to send it anywhere. So just write the hashtag or pound symbol, and we'll call this A class BTN for button. And then inside of the actual A tag, write get started. It doesn't have to be uppercase. We'll do that later in the CSS. So now if we go ahead and refresh the index.html file that we're working on here in Google Chrome, you'll see that we have the heading 1 text and the link underneath, which obviously isn't a button yet because we haven't styled it. Alright, so the only thing left to do is to add the paragraph text underneath. That's up to you whether or not you want to have the paragraph text. I just wanted to use that as an example to show how it always appears 100% at the top, being the image that we're seeing of the mountains. Okay, so I'm gonna just paste this info in there. It's up to you if you want to add the paragraph text. You can type whatever you want or just use some filler text in here. So I'll paste that in and then I'll just copy this a few times and then we'll be ready for our CSS. So I'll just paste this in there and then let's go ahead and refresh and we'll see the paragraph tags here underneath the heading 1 and the link that will turn into our button right here where it says get started. Okay, so that does it for the HTML already. Let's go ahead and jump over to style.css and get started. So the first things that we're going to do is we're going to have some custom Google fonts that will be the fonts that we use for the heading 1 and the button. So let's just import those. Just write @import URL and then in parentheses and a single quote https://fonts.googleapis, so googleapis.com/css ?family equals, and before we actually write the font family in here, I'm just going to copy this and paste it once so we don't have to write it all out again for our second font. So go ahead and just paste that on line 2. The first font is going to be called Railway, RALEWAY. The second one for the button is called Oswald, OS. So the heading 1 is Railway, the button down here is Oswald, OSWALD. Okay, let me just size this down a little bit and then we can drop down, and the first actual style that we're going to add here after the fonts is going to be for the HTML document itself and the body section. So this is called a reset style. This just gets rid of any inherent style that the web browser wants to put on the document. So we're going to get rid of any inherent margin by giving it margin 0, padding with padding 0, and we're going to make sure that the height and width of it is 100% of the browser, no matter where it displays, so the mountain and lake picture can display at 100% height and width. Alright, so if we go over here, you'll find that the space that's off to the left of the text and everything is going to disappear, so we have a full and complete canvas to work with in our web browser there with that reset style. Okay, so let's drop down and start off with the section class intro. So if you remember in HTML and CSS, when we're working with classes, we're going to select the class with the CSS using a period. So just write dot or period, intro, open and close the swirly brackets, and we'll give this a height and width of 100% as well. So if we refresh it, all of this, or well, at least the paragraph content, all the content outside of the intro class will drop down underneath the full screen. Okay, and then just say margin auto, and then we'll give it its background image. So I'm going to put this image link in the description of the video just in case anything goes wrong with you typing it out. But basically it's https://photos/photos.com/pixels/photo.png. So it's kind of a long photo URL. And the reason why we'll use it from their website directly, being pixels, is because the size of the image, it's gigantic. So it's going to display on a really wide screen, probably the widest screen you can find. And then make sure after you put the URL in there, you write no-repeat 50%, 50%. So right now it's kind of displaying at full width, but we have a little bit of margin still at the top of the intro section. And let me just show you. So here's the space at the top. So what we'll do, which will allow for more styling, positioning the image, is we're going to have it display as a table. So without that, when we add the top 0, it's still going to have that space, but when we do display table, it's going to give us more control of this sort of 100% of the screen. So next, let's give it the background size. Now we're just going to do background size cover, and that's going to make the background image URL cover the whole screen. So next, let's go ahead and style the inner class. So that's the divider that's inside of the intro class. So go ahead and just reference that with .intro and then .inner. And we're going to take advantage of tables again. So just write display table cell. And this is going to allow us to align it in the middle of the page. So then write vertical align middle. And we'll give it a width of 100%. And write max width none. So it's always going to be at 100% of the screen. So that's going to contain the content. So as you can see right now, our content is centered vertically, but it's not centered horizontally. And we're going to do that with the content class. So let me just show you really quickly in the HTML. So here we have the content class. Okay, so write .content, open and close the swirly brackets, and then we'll give this a max width of 500 pixels. So this is up to you. We don't really need a max width, but depending on how you're styling it, I think it's a great tool to have in here in case you want an image or something to display on top of the other image, for example, and you can give it a max width. So right now it's lining up to the left, but what we're going to do is tell it to text align center, and then we can move on to the breathe easy text, the heading 1 style. Okay, so now it's centered for us. And now we can just style the actual heading 1 and the button there. So we'll reference that with dot content h1, or you can just do h1, I think. So dot content h1, and then font family. This is going to be the Railway font that we added at first, the Google font at the top. Okay, so do a single quote and then write Railway. And then the backup font is Sans Serif. All right, and then we're going to give this a color that's a little bit off-white, and the hex value is hashtag F9, F3, F4. So it's a lot of F's in there, as you probably know. If you just do FFF, it's plain white. And now if we refresh, there we have that text there. Okay, so this is going to be like a similar, like a little bit of blue in there. I think very subtle blue in that white to complement the blue background. Okay, and now let's we're going to add some text shadow behind the white or off-white text to make it appear a little darker. So this is optional for you, but let's go ahead and add a little bit of text shadow here. So we're going to do 0 pixels and 0 pixels for the horizontal and vertical part of the shadow, and then we'll do 300 pixels for the blur, and then with the color black. So it's going to give a blur surrounding 300 pixels of the heading 1 text. Okay, and then we'll give it a font size of 500 pixels, or sorry, 500%. So that's the percentage of the inherent font. So if we look at, for example, 18 pixels, it's going to be a little larger. So 16 pixels is the size the web browser is using here. So it's 500% of 16 pixels, basically. All right, so now let's drop down underneath the heading 1 text here with breathe easy, and style the Get Started button that we're seeing here. Okay, so we're going to reference that with the btn class for button. So a class btn. Just write dot btn, open and close the brackets, and then let's just start with our border radius for the border that we're going to add, and we'll just give that a border radius of 9 pixels, which will create the rounded effect on the border we're going to give it. And then we'll give it the font family Oswald from the Google Fonts with the fallback font as Sans Serif. And then we're going to give it kind of this like blue turquoise color that I pulled from the actual background from the clouds in the image, or from the sky rather, not the clouds. So somewhere around there, that color is appearing on the image itself. Alright, so the hex value for this is going to be 036A81. Okay, and then let's give that a font size of 135%. Okay, and then if we refresh, there we have our Get Started text looking a little larger. So next, let's add some padding. We're kind of let me just drop down a little bit, and let's just give it a padding of 10 pixels top and bottom, and then 20 pixels left, right. So that's going to create some space around the Get Started text that the border will adhere to and display outside of. So 10 pixels top and bottom, and 20 pixels to the left and right. So if we refresh, we're not really going to see it yet because we didn't add the border. Probably should have done that before the border radius and the padding, but that's alright. So just write border, and this is going to be a solid line, so write solid, and then it's going to be the same hex value, so 0 or hashtag 036A81, and then the width of the actual border is going to be 3 pixels. Okay, so there we have our border, looking very similar here, except for we want the text to be uppercase. So write text transform uppercase, and then let's take away the underline with text decoration none. Okay, so go ahead and refresh. Alright. So now we're looking very similar to the original here. We have to kind of scroll down and hover over it to realize that it's not the original. So let's go ahead and just add that hover effect. So when we hover over the button, it's going to be white. And you could use the off-white color also if you like. So just write btn:hover, and then color, we'll just go with white, hashtag FFF, and then we'll make sure to also make the border right. So border solid, hashtag FFF, 3 pixels. Okay, and then if we refresh, there we have it changing colors as we hover over the button. And last but not least, this is another one of the optional things based on whether or not you added that paragraph text down there. I'm just going to make the paragraph text spaced out and larger. So let's give it a font size of 160% of that inherent 16 pixel size with a line height of 210%. We'll have it text align, justify to line up on either side, like the newspaper feel. And let's also create some space on either side. So just give it a margin of 3%. And let's make the font family sans serif. Okay. So refresh, and now we have it looking exactly like the original here, at least at its desktop or full width before we size it down to the size of an iPad, for example, or an iPhone. And to adjust to the iPad tablet width or cell phone width, let's go ahead and just add a media query so it knows to change the CSS when we get down to a certain width. And I'm just going to size this out to about an iPhone 7 or so we can see the changes as we're adding the CSS media queries. So go ahead and just write @media screen and in parentheses max dash width 768 pixels, which is about the standard size for an iPad, for example. So let's do the heading 1 text first. So just reference that with content.h1, and let's make it smaller. So we'll take it from 500% all the way down to 250%, or about 32 pixels. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. At about 50% of the original size for mobile or tablets. And let's do the button next. So let's decrease the font size and the padding. So we'll change the font size down to 110% from 135%. Okay, and then let's just change the padding a little bit also. So we'll do padding 7 pixels top and bottom, and 15 pixels left and right. Okay, and then if we refresh, it has similar dimensions from the original to the original button at full width. And lastly, we'll do the paragraph text. So let's just make the paragraph text a regular font size of 100% or 16 pixels, and decrease the line height from 210% to 160%. So it's still a little spaced out. Okay, so refresh, and there we have our paragraph text and our full screen responsive landing page. So that does it, you guys. Thank you for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and you go ahead and use the responsive landing page for one of your own sites or for a website that you're building for someone. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.